Now, simply Parsha on the Parsha of the week. Yes. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay. This week's Parsha is Parshat Devarim, which is also the name of the Chumash, the book that we're starting, because this past Shabbos, we finished Chumash Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, and we begin Chumash Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. As you see in the Parsha facts, it's chapter 1, verse 1, because the chapters and verses start over again by each book from 1. I will tell you, just for your edification purposes, the chapters and verses, the chapters especially, are not Jewish chapters. The Christians did that. And sometimes it's very weird where they made the chapters end, but we use it because it's just convenient, so we know where we can find it. So just should be aware of that. I'm sorry. Yep. So, and as always, the first parsha in the Chumash has the same name as the Chumash, or the Chumash has the same name as the first Parsha in that Chumash, however you want to look at it. So that's why the first Parsha in Bereshis is, in the book of Genesis, is Bereshis, and the first Parsha in Chumash Shemos is Shemos, and the first Parsha in Vayikra is Vayikra, and Bamidbar, and here in Devarim as well. So Chumash Bamidbar is the last of the 5 books. Interesting enough, by the way, just as a side note, the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms, is divided up into 5 books as well to correspond with the 5 Chumashim. So we don't emphasize that too much, but some people will sometimes read. I'm going to read one book of the 5 books of Tehillim. So just you should be aware of that. Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to recap the 5 Chumashim. First of all, within the 5 Chumashim, you have all of the Taryag mitzvos. Taryag is how much? Taf is 400, Resh is 200, Yud is 10, Gimel is 3, 613, ding, 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 correct. So they're spread out throughout all of the 5 books. In no particular amount of, you can have a portion that has no mitzvahs, you can have a portion that has many mitzvahs, and it's spread throughout all of the 5 books, as we will talk about in a moment. But let's go through Chumash Bereshis. The book of Genesis deals with God creating something from nothing, creating the earth. It has the fundamentals of our faith. God speaks to man, the concept of reward and punishment, the story of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, role models of the Avos and the Imos, of the matriarchs and the patriarchs. And we begin the foundation of the Jewish family and the 12 tribes. That would be a synopsis of Chumash Bereshis, the book of Genesis. Chumash Shemos is the national Jewish history. We become a nation. We're in Egypt. It's known as the book of redemption because here we have the suffering in Egypt and the Exodus, which had 10 plagues, and then the splitting of the sea, and ultimately the giving of the Torah, the acceptance of it, and the building of the tabernacle, of the temporary Mishkan, the temporary temple for their travels in the desert. Chumash Vayikra deals with purity, has the law and holiness, has the laws of kashrus. It's known as Torah's Kohanim. It has laws about sacrifices and the jobs of the Kohanim and the Levim and the Levites. Bamidbar, Numbers, is the travels of the Jewish people, problems and challenges while they traveled, the census that took place, and all were dictated by God to Moshe. God literally spoke through Moshe. But Chumash Devarim is a little bit different. Chumash Devarim is Moshe talking at the end of the 40 years in the desert, inspired by Hashem, but Devarim is Moshe talking, sharing Hashem's revelation with him. But it's coming from Moshe. So it's a little bit of a different level of understanding. Chumash Devarim has a special name. It's called Mishneh Torah, which means the review of the Torah, because what it has in it is reviews many of the commandments that we've already had in the other 4 books. Also has some new ones. It also has some important prayers. In Chumash Devarim, we'll have the Shema prayer. The chapters of the Shema prayer are found in Chumash Devarim. A lot of the focus is on the past mistakes, especially this week's portion, but mostly it's warning them of the dangers in the future. The underlying theme is don't emulate the nations of the world and don't be influenced by them. Remain loyal to Hashem and His Torah and remain unique. Is any of this relevant for us today? Oh, yes. Very, 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 very much so. because many Jews felt that if we only were not so distinct, then we would be accepted by the nations of the world. One of the themes of modern Zionism was exactly that. If we only had our own land, then we'd be like equal among the nations and they'd leave us alone. As a matter of fact, some of the original Zionists were thinking of making Israel in Madagascar because they weren't religious, so they had no connection to the land, and they just wanted to be just like all the other nations. Well, we have a state. And have they left us alone? Not at all. So it's a mistake to think if I only act like everybody else, and look what happens on the universities. I have a totally secular relative. She's shocked at the reaction of, after October 7th, of some of her friends, colleagues, to what's going on. And like, you know, she was just as secular as the non-Jews were, but like, what? You know, she can't believe it. And it's a trickle down effect in every area of life, being at universities, being it in filmmaking, be it in literature. If you're a Jew, it's a problem. So Moshe knows he's not going to live much longer. As you may remember, Moshe is not going into the land of Israel. So he's wanted to teach them the lessons of how to deal with the challenges. And we are travelers, many times not of our own choice, going from country to country. My parents of blessed memory left their homeland in 1945 after coming home. My father from the concentration camp. I'm going to talk about my parents' story Saturday night. God willing, you're welcome to join us. It's an amazing story, miraculous story. They waited in Paris for a year. They got married in Poland and moved to Paris, waiting for permission to come to the United States. Moved to the USA, not knowing any English, started from scratch and raised a family where many of us were instilled with the importance of commitment to God, to Torah, and to the Jewish people. So this is our story, and that's we are travelers. As we mentioned last week, Eila Maseh B'nai Yisrael, these are the travels of the Jewish people, and the four letters that to begin those words, Eila Maseh B'nai Yisrael, are the four exiles that the Jewish people had. Aleph is Edom, which is the Roman exile, which was still in. Maseh is Persia, Media. B'nai, the Bays, is Bavel, Babylonian exile. And Yisrael is Yavan, the Greek exile. So this is who we are. And Moshe is giving us instructions how to remember. You can live in the world, but realize who you are and what your job is. Just a theory that you might find interesting. The greatest gift, physical gift that God gave us. Anybody? We talked about this once. Okay, that's a spiritual gift. I'm talking about the greatest physical gift. Physical would be our five senses, right? Literally, right? So that's sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch. So I'd like to suggest that the five chumashim represent the five senses. Bereshis, I'd like to suggest, based upon a verse in Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs, is smell. Why smell? There's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim that talks about the fragrance of your oil, and the Medrash says that if you take a closed bottle of oil and you keep it in the corner, it doesn't do anything. But if you open it up and you walk around the room, what happens? It transfers the smell. So Hashem said to Avram, Lech lecha, go for yourself, go. And this way you'll teach the world about monotheism and teach the world about the mitzvahs and commandments. So the fragrance is, you come into a house and you smell my wife's challah. You didn't taste it yet, but smells good, right? So, Bereshis is the fragrance of the Jewish people because it has the patriarchs and matriarchs. It has the start of what's going to be. Shemos, the book of Exodus, is sight because God revealed himself through the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea and the giving of the Torah. And ultimately, the building of the Mishkan, the divine presence was there. So that's sight. Vayikra, I'd like to suggest, is taste. Because, any reason why I'm saying that? Can you figure out something? It has laws of kashrus, and it has the laws of karbanos, the offerings, right? Bamidbar would be touch. It has the census taking, and interesting, the word for census, for counting, is naso, count, which literally means to lift. And actually the Levim were counted that way, by being lifted, literally. But so I would suggest Bamidbar is touch, and Devarim, which means words, that's the opening, is hearing. So let's talk a little bit about hearing. Chumash Devarim. Why do we have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Anybody? Talk less and listen more. Can you hear somebody else's perspective? That's also, your ears are used to learn Torah. And the Torah gives us direction. And interestingly enough, where does the power of balance come from? Our ears. To me, that's not coincidental. Our ears are used to hear learning and growth and Torah, and that gives us balance in life. Physically, it's balance, and spiritually, it's balance. We also have built-in earplugs, right? We have to close our ears, so we shouldn't hear negativity or lashon hara or ill about other people. And to be silent to hear others' understanding and others' perspective. And also, as we had in Parshas Yisro, Vayishma Yisro, Yisro heard. It was a call to action. Everybody heard the story, but no, Yisro really heard it. He understood. I hear you. When we say I hear you, that means not just means audible, it means I understand you. And that prompted Yisro to do what he needed to do. Chofetz Chaim Heritage Foundation had a beautiful Rabbi Sittner said this. Here, HEAR can stand for 4 different things we should do when we're listening. So H stands for hold still and focus on the other person's words, right? Don't be distracted and listen. E of hear stands for make eye contact. A is actively listen, nod or signal verbally, I see, that you are attentive. And R, repeat in your own words what the other person has said. I'll say it again. I thought it's very well done. H is hold still and focus on the other person's words. E is make eye contact. A is actively listen, nod or signal verbally that you're attentive. And R, repeat in your own words what the other person said. So I thought that's a helpful tool. Now, the Haftorah this week has a special Haftorah. It's the Shabbos before. The Haftorah, for those of you who don't remember, is the section from the book of prophets that we read. Usually that's related to the Torah portion. But in the last, the 3 weeks from the 17th of Tammuz till Tisha B'Av, it's related to the tragedies of the Jewish people and the prophets warning the Jewish people of what could happen. And this one has a special name, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. It's called Shabbos Chazon, based upon the vision of Yeshayahu, Isaiah, and that's what we read the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av. So the Parsha begins when Moshe gathers the entirety of Jewish people before he dies. He's going to chastise them, but he wants everyone there. Why does he want everyone there? Because if not everyone's there, a person says, "Oh, Moshe said that. Had I been there, I would have answered him such and such." So Moshe is going to have everybody be there, so everyone can be there, and there's no excuses. And Moshe is going to, not our fault, this is what happened. And Moshe is going to chastise them. The question is, why is Moshe chastising? Isn't he supposed to be the most humble of human beings? And the answer is, humility doesn't mean you don't have an opinion. Humility doesn't mean you can't say what is right and wrong. It just means you're not full of yourself. And Moshe clearly had an opinion and had responsibility, and that's what he did. He wanted them to hear reprimand and know how to improve without excuses, and to take responsibility. It's a fascinating study that they did on the top neurosurgeons and the worst neurosurgeons. And they figured out what's the difference between the top neurosurgeons and the worst neurosurgeons. So when I thought of the question, I said probably the schooling, A, or B would be the dexterity of their fingers and how they could do surgery. That's not what they found. They found the big difference between the two is the best surgeons always took responsibility and looked to improve. And if they lost a patient, they said, what could we do differently next time? The worst neurosurgeons, they said, well, it wasn't my fault, the lighting, the equipment, the nursing, the staff, there's always not taking any responsibility. And that's really the opposite of today's society. Can you take responsibility for it? Today's society is make sure you make someone feel good about yourself. Don't lower my self-esteem by giving me a critique. As I mentioned, you as students have the highest self-esteem, but the lowest scores internationally. So a real friend, a real rabbi, will tell it to you like it is. And that's a very good thing. If you can have someone who's going to be straight and honest with you. I had a parent once told me they want their next kid to be in my class. I said, why? He says, because when it came to Parent Teachers Conference, you didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. You told me what I needed to hear. And I was very impressed with that. That is less and less common today. Most people want to be happy and want their kids to be happy and don't bother with details of improvement. But that's a separate issue. Some parents are very open, but some are not. But I'm just saying that that's why being chastised is a powerful and important idea. And if you don't have anybody who can tell you straight what you did wrong, then you need to find a better friend or a mentor that will do that to you, because otherwise you'll never know what's right and what's wrong. So Moshe is going to chastise the Jewish people. Why now? Well, number one, before his death. If not now, when then? Number two, he battled Sichon and Og, powerful people. Had he chastised them before that, they could have said, oh, Moshe is making excuses why we can't defeat these enemies. So Moshe said, no, we defeated them already. So this is not excuses about the future. This is telling you how to help you. We won the battle already. Not that they're too strong to conquer. We conquered them already. But now we need to know what we should do. But now Moshe is talking from a position of strength. Already, Hashem has already helped them, but they need to learn from their mistakes. Though interestingly enough, on one hand, Moshe is chastising them. But what happened when it came to Hashem? When God was complaining about the Jewish people, what did Moshe always do? He always defended the Jewish people to God. So Moshe is doing a balancing act, right? He's doing a balancing act. On one hand, he's chastising them to be better, but at the same time, he's their divine advocate for God. Now, there's an interesting question. Chumash Devarim means words, and who do we say is saying it? Moshe. Wait a second. When God asked him to go to Pharaoh, what did he say? He said, Loish Devarim Anochi, I'm not a man of words. I can't speak well. I have a lisp. So what happened? So I'm going to give you some nice answers to that. Number one, we can say that he was healed at Mount Sinai, because anybody and why was he healed? So one answer would be Hashem did not want Moshe to be this articulate, suave, debonair person who's going to convince Paro and the Jewish people to follow him. Hashem didn't want that. Hashem wanted somebody who wasn't speaking well, but he was speaking the truth, and let the Jewish people believe based upon the merits of the argument, not based upon his style of speaking. But God performed the miracles and the justice of their cause and let the people out. So now there was no need for him not to be able to speak well. Another is, after the Torah was given, he was able to speak. As I mentioned, people were healed at Sinai, but let's take a look at it from a deeper level. The Maharal writes that there's 4 different levels of things in this world. There is the domain, the inanimate object, like a rock. There is the tzameach, the thing growing. That's like a tree, plant, right? Then there's the chai, a living thing, like animals, correct. And the top one is medaber, speaker. And that's the humanoids. And ideally, Yisrael, the Jewish people, should be on top of that. Why is man called the speaker out of all things? He's called the speaker. So it says that at the beginning of Genesis, it says that Hashem blew into man nefesh chaya, a living spirit. And the Targum Onkelos, the Aramaic translation, says ruach b'malala, a speaking spirit. Dolphins can communicate, but only humans can say poetry or communicate concepts. So what is speech? Speech is the connection between body and soul. Hashem blew in the nefesh chaya, living soul, into the person that was able to speak. Yes, you need to have vocal cords, but you also need a godly spirit. And that's why, by the way, during prayer, ideally, we should not be scanning the words. We should be saying the words. You could say it low, but you should be saying the words and hearing them. And study of Torah is usually done that way as well. Now, Moshe, however, his soul was on a very high level, and therefore it couldn't mesh with the physical world so much. And that's why he couldn't speak so well. He couldn't relate to the physical. When the Torah was given, that gives us the tools to bring heaven to earth and earth to heaven. And that allowed, through God's communication to us and through fulfilling the mitzvahs, the commandments, so that now there's a better integration between body and soul. And then after that, Moshe was able to speak, which is a very beautiful, beautiful idea. Another practical one is he couldn't speak to Pharaoh because he didn't know the language of politics, of flattery, of deceit, of backstabbing, of he was too honest and straight, so he couldn't do that. And I'll tell you an interesting vignette, if you will, with a boy that I knew, a brilliant boy, the son of a rabbi who used to live in Los Angeles. And someone was telling the rabbi that, now this kid didn't grow up with TV. Someone was telling the rabbi that he had gone to somebody else's house to pick something up, not realizing that the alarm was on. And when he came out of the house, the police were there thinking he was a robber, saying, "Don't make a move or we'll blow you away." So everybody knows what that means, right? And this boy, hearing this, started laughing because he didn't own a TV. And his father asked him, "Why are you laughing?" He says, "Let them blow all they want. Blowing doesn't hurt." Blow you away. He didn't know the language. He didn't know the language. So Moshe couldn't relate to Paro. That's another interpretation of why he couldn't speak to him, because there's a whole style of it. It's interesting that the word MS, this camp has blocked the board, but the word MS, it says here, Aleph Mem Saf MS, truth. The Aleph has two legs, the Mem has two legs, and the Saf has two legs. Sheker, falsehood, Shin Kuf Resh, each letter has 1 foot. To tell you that MS is truth, that stands. Sheker eventually falsehood will fall. There was once, the Chavetz Chaim came to be a character witness for a student that had been falsely accused of something. And the lawyer who represented the person said, "I want to tell you who this sage rabbi is. He sent a letter to somebody who was going to another town, and when he instead of mailing it, he sent it, so he ripped up a stamp instead so that the government shouldn't lose the cost of the stamp because he was sending it to the person faster," which, by the way, by Jewish law, you're not required to do, but that's what he did. So the judge looked at the lawyer and said, "Do you believe that story?" And the lawyer said, "Honestly, no, Your Honor. But they don't say stories about you and me about that," like that. So I'm just letting you know who the Chavetz Chaim was. So the Rishna, the great Hasidic master, was talking about his son or daughter's marrying somebody, and he started listing his lineage of the great rabbis he came from. And the other man said, "I don't have any great rabbis I come from, but just I'm honest." And he said, "That's the best. That's the best. That's the best kind of lineage to have, being coming from and being honest. That's the best." Interestingly enough, Moshe does not initially use a 2x4 to tell them what they did wrong. He alludes to it by talking about the locations of the mistakes that they made. And that's why actually some of the verses, you look at them, you don't understand what's going on. He said this thing and that thing, and he went there and there. But the oral Torah fills us in. This is what this mistake they made there. That's that mistake there. The story of the eagle, of the golden calf. They had a lot of money initially, and they used it the men used it for the wrong thing, for the giving toward the Egel Azav, for the golden calf. But they rectified it later on by giving the money toward the Mishkan, the construction of the tabernacle. What does generosity mean? If you give everyone, you're a fool. You don't know what you have. You don't know whether the person is using it properly. If you're not giving anybody, you're cheap. So you have to be discerning. You're giving a blessing, but know how and when to give and not to give. and don't be like the Jewish people, the men for the egel, for the golden calf. There was the giant Og who was trying to throw a mountain onto the Jewish people, and Hashem sent ants into the mountain to make it crumble in his hands and go on his head to kill him. Moshe makes judges in the parsha, and he wants learned people, modest people, God-fearing, and not into money, and who are searching for the truth, and can admit that they don't know and go to a higher authority. And look at the merits of each case, regardless of large or small amount, and regardless of who it is. The mitzvah says, you'll see in the Parsha facts, don't appoint a man as a judge who is not learned in the laws of the Torah, even though he may be learned in other wisdoms, and that a judge presiding over a trial should not fear any evil man. So he should rule honestly. And judges should deliberate, and that's really true not only of judges, but of us as well. We should be thinking and making what's the right thing to do, figuring it out, instead of just sliding through it. Moshe said the Torah in 70 languages. Why is that important? This is pre-art school days. Why does it have to be in 70 languages? And the answer is related to, unfortunately, the Jewish people are going to be dispersed among the nations. And Hashem wants the Torah to be connected to every culture, every background, every language, to facilitate understanding and being able to incorporate it. And the truth of the matter is, today we see serious converts from every walk of life that have joined the Jewish people and have found a connection to Hashem that way. We talked about the sins of the spies. Moshe talks about the sins of the spy. You didn't go into the land right away because of it, and next time have faith. Seir is not attacked. These are descendants of Esav. Why? Because they had Esav. One virtue he had was he had kibbud av v'em. He honored Yitzchak very much. But the reward sometimes for a good act that's not done with the right intent could be on this world rather than on the world to come. And that's what happened with Esav. Intention is a very important idea. If I do a mitzvah because it's beneficial for me to do it right now, I gain from doing this mitzvah, that's okay. You get a reward for it, but it's limited. If you do it because I understand the mitzvah, that's a higher level, but it's again about you. If I do because God commanded it, then the reward can be eternal. And again, Ammon and Moab were not conquered because they're descendants of Lot, the nephew of Avrohom. Interesting, Ammon and Moab, where they get the names from, because they were the daughters of Lot that were intimate with their father because they thought the world was destroyed. And Moab is Me'av, from father. She was a little bit blatant in describing it, how she became impregnated that way. But we owe Lot because Lot did not reveal that Avram and Sarah were husband and wife. And so I just wanted to mention, I'll conclude with this, with the Haftorah. The book of prophets that we're going to read this week. from Yeshayahu Isaiah. It's on page 1195. You don't have to pull it out. So here's a powerful line. God says, Bonim gadalti v'roimamti. Children I raised and exalted, but they have rebelled against me. They rebelled against me. And the next verse says, verse Gimel, Yodea shar kainai v'chamor avos ba'alov. But Yisrael lo yada ami lo his name. Which means that an ox knows the owner and a donkey his master's trough. Israel did not know. My people did not perceive. And the article brings Reb Samson Fall Hirsch a very sobering line, and I'll read it with you. The Haftorah, the final one of the three affliction, is read on the Shabbos that precedes Tisha B'Av. As Reb Mendel Hirsch points out, the prophet does not lament because the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Rather, he laments over the underlying causes of the destruction. And this annual lesson serves to focus the national mourning of Tisha B'Av not to the past, but to the present. It's not enough to bemoan the great suffering by our people with the destruction of the land, our holy city, and our holy temple, but to use the mourning as a way of initiating an examination of the present day feelings, thoughts, and deeds. What have we done to eliminate the attitude and practice that thousands of years ago sent our ancestors into exile? Not once, but twice. Have we improved our approach to the divine service as a way of life, a life devoted to duty rather than to a substitute for it? Are our verbal offerings, like the animal offerings described by the prophet, merely perfunctory, performed rituals, never internalized, never spoken from the heart, just from the lips and outward? Or as Rav Hirsch puts it, is our Jewish contemporary present already so deeply imbued with the Jewish spirit, so filled with the Jewish way of thinking, with knowledge of Judaism, with knowledge of all compromising and deep contents of the Torah, that it could form a worthy environment for a temple of God to be erected in our midst? Does that not the gulf between Israel and this God yawn perhaps wider than ever? Very sobering idea. And that's the Haftorah to let us know that, yes, we bemoan the loss of the temple, but we also have to look at what does it mean to me? What could I do better? What could we as a Jewish people collectively and individually do better? So may Hashem help that we merit learning the lessons of the past today so that we can merit to have the temple soon in our days. All right. You have the flyers for Tisha B'Av. Elisheva, his flyers here for you as well. Open to questions and thoughts and comments. Elisheva, you want to take a flyer?
This two here.
Two different ones. You got it? Okay. You're welcome. Take care. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Okay. Again, we'll be off next week for sure, and probably the weeks after. Check the emails about it. But keep on learning, keep on studying. Take care.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Take care. All the best. Malka, go ahead. Go ahead. Diane, all the best. Michelle, take care.
Thank you.